Hello, welcome to the New Features in FieldGenius 9 webinar. Good morning to most of you, and I notice there are people from many parts of the world, so for some it's good afternoon, and for some it's even good night. Thanks again for attending. I'd like to welcome our presenters. First we have Mark Cahill. He's a British Columbia land surveyor, and he's actually a former product manager at Microsurvey, so we have a history that goes back a ways. And Mark is going to talk about a new feature called RTS from control points. We're also joined by Jacob Wall. He's a land surveyor in training, and he's also our current mobile product manager. Jacob's responsible for most of the new features you see here, Jacob and his hardworking team of programmers. And I'm James Johnston. I'm a geomatics technologist and a Bachelor of Education, and I run the support and training department at Microsurvey. Before we launch into the webinar, a couple of housekeeping details. At the end of the webinar, you're going to get a follow-up email. That'll be about 48 hours later, and it has a link to a recording of this webinar. So if you have any colleagues who aren't able to attend, let them know that as long as they've signed up, they can access that recording. Or for anybody who didn't sign up, if you just go to the Microsurvey webpage and go to support, you'll see that there's a news article with a link to the video. Have a look at your GoToTraining toolbar, and you'll notice that there's a handout, and that handout is a PDF copy of the PowerPoint that we're going to go through. Go ahead and grab a copy of that during the webinar if you'd like it. We are looking forward to hearing your questions, so you'll notice that there's a chat line. Go ahead and use that chat line for questions. Jacob Wall's going to be watching it, and he'll probably be answering some of the questions in line, and we're also going to have pauses during the presentation for questions from the audience, and Jacob will highlight some of the questions that we think that lots of people will want to hear the answer to. There's also going to be a series of polls, so that we're always interested in learning about our audience, and I've noticed in past webinars that the audience finds that interesting as well. So thanks in advance for participating. At the end of the webinar, we'll announce a special deal for webinar attendees, and it'll relate to our famous Christmas sale campaign. Here, I'll just go over the agenda. So first, we're going to have Mark Cahill teach us a little bit about the rotate, translate, and scale from control points feature. It's a feature that his company has beta tested, and they actually have a bit of history with this feature. And then we'll move on to group codes. So I'll show you some examples of this new feature. Group codes in general is a way of taking commonly used field codes and accessing them quickly. And you can use, I'll show you an example of using group codes for line work, and another example using group codes for quick selection of descriptors. Then we'll talk about a new feature named auto location, which is a feature that will be unlocked for anyone who has a premium license of FieldGenius. In the end, Jacob will talk a little bit about menu updates, and in the end, we'll leave the mic open for questions. So let's start with two polls. I have questions for you regarding what type of equipment you have, and then we'll follow up with another survey just asking the audience what different manufacturers of field equipment they use. So I'll launch that poll. So we're just asking basically what classes of equipment you use, and this is multiple choice, or it's multiple choice, and you can select multiple answers. I know that many companies have more than one piece of equipment. GPS is winning the race. And I'm always curious about what other is. I suppose that could be a UAV. All right, we're at about 87%. I will close the poll and we'll share it. Okay, so everyone's looking at the results. So it looks like we've got 61% of attendees have a regular total station, 61% have a robotic total station, 88% have GPS, 15% other. It would be really interesting to learn what other would be. Like I said, I'm guessing UAV or scanner or something like that. Thanks very much for your response. Let me hide that. We are also curious about what makes of equipment you have. And I have to apologize right now because I didn't have enough choices. So I've only given you the 4 major brands, and I know there are lots of people that are going to select other. And again, this is you can select multiple answers. Good, got to about 92% there. All right, let's close that poll and I'll share the results with you. So yes, I suspected that we'd have lots of people with Leica just because Microsurvey is now a hexagon company, and I suspected that the other category would be well represented. So thanks very much for telling us about your equipment, and let me hide that. Okay, then let's move on to the first topic. So welcome to Mark Cahill. Thanks again for A, helping us to make sure that this feature worked well, and B, for offering to tell us a little bit about how your company uses it. Mark's company, Altera Land Surveying, has in a way been using what we would term kind of a backdoor version of this feature for quite a long time. Companies that had a GPS license could kind of use GPS even though it was just regular terrestrial data, but it was kind of an insider's method. And so now what we've done is we've developed this feature into, now let's call it a front door version of the feature. Mark, before we talk about the feature, would you like to tell the audience a bit about your company and what software and solutions you use?
Sure, James. We're not a massive firm. We have a couple offices in the Okanagan. We have 3 crews working. The company has 3 Leica 1203 robots. We also have TalkOn GPS. I started using a function like this. It's essentially, if those are familiar with the Helmholtz transformation, that's the mathematics we're working with, and lots of software over the years has had a function like this and named in various different ways, but basically a similarity transformation, and we find it super useful and quite a bit more repeatable for the staff, even for inexperienced staff. So.
Good, and I saw that you'd moved on to the topic of how in this case what we're showing here is a picture from Microsurvey CAD Helmholtz transformation routine, and I thought I'd advance the slide so you can tell the audience roughly how it works.
Sure. So essentially what we've got here, this simple drawing is, you can imagine it would be a dimensioned, 2 lots dimensioned from the legal survey plan of record. And then we're also illustrating a field survey that's kind of misaligned to the plan information. So we've got 2 lots that are 20 units by 35 units deep and side by side. And then we've got some field survey points, which are the 100 series point numbers. So what the similarity transformation allows us to do is to mathematically do a least squares best fit to the control, which in this case we would treat the plan information as control. Now, a few other ways you could use this is you might be transforming into established control points, or perhaps a control network that someone else has provided you to work from. We use this tool kind of after the fact sometimes to best fit our field survey to the plan for a location drawing or a topographic survey. We also use it in stakeout situations where we go to a site to stake a building, and the field crew can localize to all the pins they find and get confidence in where they're going to stake the building. Essentially what the calculation does is, sorry, just go back for a sec, James.
Sorry.
The calculation, we match up the pairs, so we can look at this group and see the field survey points start at 101, go through to 112, and then the plan points are 1 through 6. We tell the software that we have this range of points, and in fact with the new tool that we're talking about today, we don't even have to do that in some situations. But we tell the point pairs to match up, and then the software will do a least squares best fit, and it minimizes the residuals on each of the 6 points here and reports back how good the fit is. And if we find that perhaps one post is disturbed or damaged or something to that effect, it'll jump out at us in the reporting, and we can exclude that from the calculation. And then we can adjust our local system into this plan system. Okay, next slide. So the example we've created, we're going to put this into practice a little bit here. So this was a field survey to locate a building, and our process here would be the field crew goes out with a pre-calculated base plan. So we've got the lots all calculated in the low digit point numbers here, 1 through, I'm seeing 18. So that's just the plan information. And what that allows our crews to do is they can go to a site, get set up, as soon as they find 2 posts, they could localize to those 2 posts and then continue searching for other posts. And we just, we're a company that likes to pre-calculate things and know where we're looking. Other firms might want to send a crew out, sort of, they do less office work up front and the crew figures this out on site, but our approach is a little bit different, so we would pre-calculate that. So then you can see they've set up on what is the road actually south of where the building is, at point 1001, backside 1002, and they just assume a direction, and then they would survey the first 2 pins they found. So 502 at the west end, and can't see a point number, but we've got another point out at 7, plan position 7 at the east end of the site. And in some cases, say you could resect in this case and get started, and the resection would allow you to get started and sort of get hooked into the plan. But where the resection falls down is you can't add to it later, so because it might turn out that one of these pins is displaced. So we would do a local calc to get the first 2, then we would move into the site. You'll see in the center of the subject lot 11.1003, that would be our second setup, and then the crew could tie the 2 iron posts they found at the back of the lot, or the north side. Now we can add those 2 things, redo the localization calculation, and confirm that all those pins match the plan information, and they'd be satisfied, and they could leave the job knowing that they don't have to go back to get more survey evidence, because what they found actually fits with the plan records. So we'll look at the calculation, and we'll step through this a couple more ways, sorry. So here's another sketch. We're kind of illustrating the steps of the survey. So again, the crew's set up. They've tied the first post of 502, and they've tied the house points and put a hub into the back of the yard. Now we had this missing from the last sketch, so that's fine. You'll see we've also got point 507 located, and the crew has gone into the site and they've got the back post located. So I guess they didn't even do the first localization here. No, now we can start to illustrate. Sorry, James?
Not in this case. I took out that one step just to tidy it up.
Okay. So we've got 4 posts tied, and we can see there that 502 is, and so imagine our 1,000 and 500 series points and the 2,000 points are our field survey work. All the 1 and 2 digit point numbers are the plan information. So now we can set up the pairs and we can see what is supposed to match with the design or plan information that's highlighted by the ellipses. So to calculate this, we just have to tell the system where the points match up. So you can get into the calculations menu, select rotate, translate, scale, and then the apply user defined parameters. I believe that's the original RTS function, James, is that right?
You're correct.
Yeah, okay. So now we have the control calculated parameters. Go into there, and then we prompted to add control. So that adds us, we start setting up the point pairs. So now in the lower left, we've got the control set up. So notice at the top, control calculation. This can be just horizontal, or you can also include the vertical. So if you were adjusting into somebody's control network on a site in a different situation, you could also compare your elevation information with that on the control points. And another thing to keep in mind here, although I've mentioned least squares along the way, the calculation is least squares, but we are not adjusting the source points within themselves. It's like one separate coordinate system that's going to be transformed and fit into another coordinate system, but there's no distortion put into your fieldwork. It's as measured. So we pick a source control points here. So if we look at 502 being our post tie, and then the destination point is number 2. So we just select those to assemble that pair, so to speak. And you would do this for each pair in the system, in the survey. Once you populate the record, each time you add control, it'll add a row to this dialog box we're looking at now. So you can see at the top, source on the left, 502 to destination point ID 2. We're using horizontal only in this case for that pair. And then we've also gone through the same process to associate 510 with 10, 507 with 7, 515 to 15. And the system will calculate the best fit as we go along. And we can see that 515 is an outlier. And again, this precision depends a lot upon the situation that you're using the tool for. We've picked a legal survey situation where we're typically trying to work to be within 2 centimeters. That could vary dramatically depending on the type of situation you're using this in. The key item to note, though, with the function of the tool is that 515 and 15 has a delta in the easting of close to 10 centimeters, or about 4 inches for the feet thinkers here. So let's just kick ahead, and we want to exclude that from the calculation. So see where we have in our list of yes and no's for the horizontal and vertical, kind of central to the dialogue. So we've got in the first dialog box, we see that yes is on, so we've included the 515 and 15, and we see the displacement at 13 mils and 98 mils. Now in the second dialog box, we've gone in and disabled that pair, or just removed them from the calculation. It will still illustrate the displacements, because we'll occasionally pull the wrong point out, and then we can see, geez, that's not so bad. I'll go back and add that one in and remove a different one. So once we've removed 515 to 15, you'll see that our fit is now quite exceptional, just a few millimeters. And at that point, we would consider that we've found 3 posts that agree well with the registered document. Or again, if you're in a control cap situation, you've found 3 undisturbed control points, and you've got one that's there's something up with it. So now when we tap OK on this box, we go forward some more. And we would go to the adjust points function, and there is a couple of selections, a couple of neat things going on in here. In the old backdoor method we used, which was basically utilizing the GPS local transformation tool, we would set up the calculation in very much the same way we did here, but then we had to go and kind of manually select all the points that we wanted to transform. And it was kind of cumbersome, but it did get us, it enabled us to do what we wanted to do. What's really neat about the new function here is it's geared towards total station work, and the software is smart enough to know that a sequence of points have been collected with the total station. So we can just select transform points measured with total station, which functions much like the GPS localization. It will move all of your points in. Now, once you've done that, the only thing you'll have to do is reoccupy your points. You'd run the occupy point function to get sort of the software set up again on your adjusted positions. So now once we've completed the calculation, you'll see that the field survey points are all kind of adjusted and aligned with the plan information. And that calculation is done, and we've seen how well that should fit. So if you went in and inverse between each pair, you'd find that distances match what we saw in the calculation, and you'd find that that point, I think it was 507 down to the east. Sorry, no, it was 515.
Yeah,
you'd find 515 to 15 to be out by, about 15 centimeters. So different cases we can use that tool. It's still back to that sketch for a second, James.
Oh, sure.
So we'll just can imagine this in a slightly different scenario, if you can humor me for a second. Perhaps we had a building calculated and we were going to lay out that building, set out points 2001 through 2006. The approach would be very much the same. It's just that the building would be pre-calculated in its design position. The field crew would arrive and start searching for survey evidence. Then they would localize to the site with the same calculation we just did. And now they're set up to lay out that building, in its design position. And the biggest thing we like about this is it gives our crews confidence that they've got it right. And we have a couple of guys working with us who are quite new to surveying. They've got a couple of years under their belts. But we had them doing successful building layouts within a month of starting because we had to teach them one software tool to calculate things and get in the right spot, and it gives them lots of confidence. Whereas if we didn't have this tool, we'd be playing around with inversing and checking this distance and checking that interior angle. And although that's a method that lots of people have great skills at, it's a very difficult one to teach to somebody new. Most of the people that do it that way might have taken them several years to learn that approach. So I'm touching on the upside here. So we certainly can get a really good feel for how things work on the site, or if we were fitting into control, we can see what control is undisturbed and what isn't, what's been damaged. And the whole thing, it just gives us confidence. We have all the crews doing things exactly the same way, so that if we have to send a different crew to the site and there's already a localization set up there, they understand everything about that. It's not, geez, what did Joe do on this site? I mentioned earlier the resection function is a good way to get started, but it kind of, in my terms, it doesn't have legs. You can't kind of run with it. You just have to use what you get out of the gate. Another thing with resection, we also use microsurvey StarNet here, and we adjust most of our legal surveys. Perhaps not something like a house layout here, but if we were to send the crew out to do a preliminary survey for a subdivision, they would use the same localization function to enable them to get hooked into the site so they could search for the other iron posts they need to find with precision. With a resection, they can start with 3 points or 4 or whatever, and they get going, but if they find the resection was wonky, they kind of can't tighten up their work that easily. With this tool, we can rerun the function, discard the post that turned out to be out of position, and tighten up our searches. The other thing we can do is when we do this initial setup, we can do our multi-sets on every post, and that's just our style. We turn both faces to every legal evidence or control point. With a resection, you don't have that much flexibility. So you could start with a resection. Once you're locked in, we would still have to do multi-sets to each point to get the observation precision we want.
Sure makes lots of sense.
So again, just the last item I think I've already touched on here is just working this out kind of by hand, doing a rotation to 2 points, then checking and inversing other things. Not a bad method, but it's definitely a much more difficult thing to teach to someone that's fresh out of college that's learning how to survey. One final thing to touch on is we can bring this data into the office and we can repeat the exact calculation in the field using the MS-CAD Helmholtz transformation.
Great. I remember thinking about how you would contrast the traditional method that you and I would have learned back in our field days versus what the field crews can do now. And it's kind of like the old method that we learned is kind of like an art. And yeah, it takes just a couple of years of making mistakes and calling the office and frustration to learn how to do that. Whereas this method, yes, it's a procedure, and you know, you can more or less teach the main procedure, and they can follow it. And you as the office worker, that gives you a fair bit of confidence, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it doesn't take very long. Like when these young fellows give us a call when they're starting out with this, their call is like, okay, I've got 4 points, and my localization is giving me 3 or 4 centimeters. Is that suitable for this job? And it's like, yeah, tell me which ones you've got. I can look at it in my CAD view on the desktop. Yeah, those are fine. Maybe discard this one that's 2 lots over and see how that goes. They do it right on the phone and say, oh, great, I'm 2 centimeters and everything. Great, away you go. So it's a 1 or 2 minute phone call versus asking them, what's the distance between this post and this post, and what's your interior angle? And all those things are slower to calculate in the field too. So this is just a black and white mathematical calculation. Like you say, the art is kind of gone out of it, but as far as associating and checking field work, it really does work fantastic for us, and it's been something that I've been dying to see in FieldGenius for literally 12 years. We wanted to build this a long time ago, and there's lots of people in British Columbia use this function, but it seems a little bit isolated to British Columbia, and I think somewhat that's due to an old software package that lots of people used to use that had it. But it's so black and white to me how beneficial it is. It's faster, it saves us time, it gives the crews lots of confidence that when they're staking something, they know they're fit really well into the, whether it be a plan network or a control network.
So thanks a lot, Mark. And I suppose one other thing that you touched on that we weren't able to highlight is the fact that one other aspect of this new feature is that it is actually possible to clear your transformation parameters and redo a transformation in the context of the same job. So that another capability.
Yes, yeah.
We wanted to open up the microphone to questions. Jacob, have you got some questions coming in that would be of interest that Mark or I could answer?
Yeah, Brian was curious how you were able to remove the 0.15 from the calculation. And I just replied that the edit control option in the main dialog allows you to open up the same screen as you use to define the pair, and you can uncheck or check the horizontal and vertical boxes.
Yeah.
I think just in our images here, which of course James had to do a lot of work on to set them up for the presentation, the edit control button is enabled once you have a list there. So that's, you just tap edit control to turn it on or off. It's just grayed out at the moment, but in use of the software it would be enabled.
That's right. Once you have selected a row, then the option becomes available.
All right, and that was it for questions, was it?
That's all I'm seeing here at the moment, yes.
All right, great. Okay. Okay, so now, actually, before I move on to this topic, Mark has to go early, and I can tell why, because it's our first day of snow, and you've probably got 2 trucks stuck and a whole bunch of other stuff going on. So thank you very much for your time, Mark, and
No
have a good
problem.
weekend.
I hope it makes sense to folks and that they'll give it a try. I think it's a little bit of a different concept, but if I could see everyone, I would hold my left hand out, and imagine the tips of each finger is a control point or a plan position. Then my right hand is a totally different field network that's just local and assumed, and we just match the fingertips up and transform everything to match, and away you go. So I'd encourage anyone to give it a try if they're using this in practice, or if you're someone that's selling FieldGenius, educate people on the power of this function, because it really is fantastic.
Yep, we like it too. All these
right,
old BC surveyors.
Yeah, I'm not that old yet. Okay, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
You too, bye-bye.
All right. Okay, thanks everybody for your attention to that and for your questions. I'm going to now highlight another feature, the group code feature. So I'm showing you where you'll find in the measure mode button of FieldGenius, you've got 2 new buttons, group code and group code auto. And the only difference between the two is when you're using a total station, group code auto allows you to store points with a minimal number of button picks. To characterize the group code feature, this is a measure mode that allows you to sort of select groups of field codes, and you can associate those field codes with line work behavior. You can select different options for display of these features to make them easy to, or these descriptions to make them easy to access. And you can also set patterns so that the descriptions are set as the default automatically. 2 fairly typical areas where these features will be used. I'm going to go through 2 examples. So if you are, for example, performing repeated cross sections across a road, in this case a multi-line road, what this allows you to do is set up a system whereby your descriptions will be offered to you in a repeating pattern. You can automatically activate line work as you're going. And it's relatively easy, actually. You know, you'll notice that this roadway has widenings and intersections and things like that, and this feature actually allows you to quickly modify your pattern on the fly and just keep going. I truly think that the most important benefit of this feature is that it's going to enhance the safety when you're working out in the field. You can, like I say, keep your head up. You don't have to be looking at your screen and interacting nearly as much as you would in the past. And when you're in a roadway situation, it's pretty common to have to be keeping your eyes up, look for traffic, and look for construction equipment. The other typical example might be if you're just doing a simple topo survey, or perhaps you're doing GIS pickup or something. You've got a limited number of codes that you want to be able to access. You just want to pick them quickly. You're just picking points. You're not too worried about doing field to finish line work. You may want to be able to store points, and if you're doing GIS data collection, assign additional attributes, or you might need to take photo notes or audio notes as you go. And probably the strongest benefit of that application is with group codes. It enhances your speed. Let me give you a quick tour of the group code editor that you can access from the menu home button in FieldGenius. First of all, you've got your current active group. You've got a pull down that allows you to select from, we have a number of predefined group codes built into the program, but you can also create your own. You can also copy them. You can also copy codes, group codes from the program settings. You see in the green square, that shows us the contents of the road 2-lane group code. You can see that it has a series of descriptions in it. You can see that you've got up and down arrow buttons that allow you to control the order in which they're displayed. You can see that there's a line work button that allows you to control what type of line work, if any, you'd like to associate with this code. And you'll notice how there's an Add Code button just above. That's the button that you would access if you wanted to copy codes out of your AutoMap and make a new group code or code group. You'll also notice that you've got pattern. This allows you to control the order in which the codes are selected. In this case, we've got a zigzag pattern. The Show Button Panel button, if you have that on, it will hide your map view and all you see is your codes to give you a full screen display of your codes. And when you have that off, then you see the map view and you see a carousel display of your codes. Let me illustrate what these settings will mean to you by going through 2 examples. So here's the group code editor, and I've configured it for a typical multi-lane road survey. So we've selected the road 4-lane group. Notice how we've got the edge of asphalt description is set so that a spline will be started as soon as you start using that code. And notice how the centerline description, it'll start drawing straight lines as soon as you select that code. The pattern is set to zigzag, and so what that'll mean is it'll offer you your descriptions in order starting from the top of the list. It will proceed to the bottom of the list, and then it'll stay at the bottom of the list and work its way back up to the top. That allows you to do one cross-section of the road, advance to the next cross-section, and then just cross the road in reverse order. Show Button Panel is off. That'll allow us to use carousel display. When I pick OK, let me give you a preview of how that would work in the field. So now you can see map view is displayed, you can see group code is active, and if you look down on the bottom toolbar, you can see the carousel is currently displaying the edge of asphalt code has been selected. You can see the line work button is activated, and you can also see on the map view that a blue X is displayed, and that tells us that if we store a point, a line will be drawn to that blue X location. After we take a shot, you can see the line is drawn in. Notice how the blue X has now advanced to point 9 because it's anticipating the next figure to be activated. Notice how down in the carousel the description has advanced to the fog line description. So now I'll just step to the fog line and I take my next shot. And again, see how it's advanced to center line? It's ready for me to move up to the center line and measure the point. Here I'll continue to advance and all the way back to edge of asphalt. And so notice now that we've got edge of asphalt and the figure edge of asphalt number 2 is current. And because we're using zigzag, it knows that that's the last in the pattern, and so it's going to retain that pattern so that I can take a second shot using both that figure and that description. Now it's advancing, going in the other direction. That allows me to step forward, take another measurement, step forward, take another measurement, step forward, take another measurement, and we finish the pattern off. Now I've showed you a fairly typical and very quick method of doing or using the group code feature. Some of the things that I haven't showed you are you can actually override what's happening as you're working. So at this point I haven't touched on the line work mode button, but if I wanted to, I could introduce a gap in one of my figures just by toggling line work off temporarily. It is possible to associate a different figure with a code just by picking that figure off the screen. The pattern button in the bottom left corner, if you ever need to change your pattern, in fact you can do change pattern on the fly. So if I wanted to switch from a 2-lane to a 4-lane pattern, it's easy enough to do. And you can also, if for example you wanted to repeat a code, you can just override whatever description in the carousel is displayed by just sliding over and picking a different description. Much flexibility in this routine. Let me go through a different example. So here's where I can use group code for just for quick selection of codes while doing a simple topo survey. So I've got it configured. I'm using the utilities example code. You can see that all of the descriptions are no longer linked with line work. And so when I store a utility pole point, it's not going to start drawing a line. You can see that I don't have a pattern. These are the types of descriptions that I'm just going to access in random order, so I don't need to set any pattern. I have Show Button Panel on, and that's going to hide the map view in the carousel. Here's what it looks like when you pick on OK. So you don't see map view at all, you just see the codes that you want to be able to pick quickly. So all you do is you just pick your code as step 1, and you pick the measure button. And that's all there is to it. And it quickly stores the point and allows you to pick the next point. If at any point you need to change your pattern, you just go to the pattern button and edit what your choices are. Thanks for your attention to that topic. I'd like to see if there's any questions. Jacob, you might have your mic off. Did you have any other questions?
I don't see anyone raising their hands here. You can use your raise your hand button if you want to ask something over your mic.
Oh,
we can unmute you.
All right. Or okay, but nothing in the chat line, eh?
Negative.
Okay. All right. Okay. Then let me ask you some questions. So I'd like to ask the audience, just when they think about what they're looking for in field equipment, what are some qualities that you are looking for? So this again is going to be a multiple choice poll, and you can select, oh hang on, I'm showing you the old one. Here we go. Let me launch that poll. You can select more than one option if you like. I know that we have different types of companies that have different types of needs, so I'm really interested in hearing what the mix is. All right, I'll close that and let's have a look at the results. So, looks like the majority of users are looking for something that's well integrated with the equipment. I think I can understand that need, because nothing more frustrating than simply not being able to connect or seeing display or delayed search behavior with robotic equipment, things like that. I'm also interested in, and I suppose it's typical of the type of customer that microsurvey works with, that they're looking for something that's simple and easy to learn. And I know I've noticed that there's some resellers here, and they love to be able to offer software to a customer where the customer, you know, can play with this for a short amount of time and leave the sales room with confidence. So that kind of makes sense. We've got simple and easy to learn software. Good integration with the Office software. I suspect the people who are selecting that are people who have the full suite of microsurvey products. We're always proud of how they work together. And field to finish comes in not lots calculations tools and field to finish. Those come in tied for last place. And I have a feeling that just reflects the smaller companies, the 1 or 2 man operations, where getting things done, in a minimum number of steps is just a big priority. So thanks for your responses. Let me hide that poll and we'll move on to the next topic. So auto location is a new feature. Customers that have a premium license of FieldGenius will find when they activate FieldGenius 9 that they're going to see an MEP license is added. Auto location, to characterize it briefly, would be, think of this as being a reflectorless staking feature that is designed for robotic total stations. And typically it's used in a construction situation when you've got a horizontal or a vertical plane, and you're looking for a quick and easy way to project a position to it. So typical examples, auto location, it uses reflectorless EDM mode and the laser pointer as tools that allow you to, usually it uses a reiterative process to measure a horizontal or a vertical plane, and then it uses the laser to project a location. So a typical example is you can project an XY coordinate to a floor. You can project an XY coordinate to a ceiling. In a more three-dimensional setting, you can project an XYZ coordinate, the shortest distance to a wall, or at a right angle distance to a wall. Or if you've got two XYZ coordinates, you can project a line and see where it intersects with a wall. How does it work? If you choose to use auto location, what you'll find is when you go in, if you're connected to a robotic total station, you'll go into your instrument settings and you just pick on enable auto location. Then later on, when you select a point to stake, what you'll discover is you have a number of new options to display or to choose from. You can select point on wall or pipe through wall if you're trying to project a point to a wall. Select point on floor if you want to project an XY location to a floor. Point on ceiling if you want to project an XY location onto a ceiling. After you select that option, you'll find that the robot takes you'll be prompted first to just roughly aim the robot at the floor, and after that the robot takes a series of shots, calculates the plane, and then it'll project a laser showing you the point that you want to mark. Some typical applications. So point on floor. What this will allow you to do is pick your XY location, and you can see from the image here that the laser is just indicating that spot on the floor. Something that's really neat to show people when you're demonstrating this feature is I could take a pallet or something and lay it on top of the spot where you see the laser, and that won't confuse the routine. You could just tell it to project that point again. It will shine the laser at the spot on top of the pallet where the point should be on the floor, and that just tells you, okay, slide the pallet out of the way, shoot it again, and it gives you the true position. Another example that I think is very valuable is the point on ceiling feature. So this will allow you to select your XY location, roughly aim at the ceiling, and it'll project that point. So in this example, you can see how we're locating pipe hangers. And huge advantage here is if you're needing to use a scissor lift or ladder to get to that point to mark it, you only have to use it once. You've got the laser showing you where to go, you go up to the ceiling, you make the mark, and you move on. If by any chance your vision to that location is obstructed, it's really easy just to switch to point on floor, mark the point on the floor, and then just project it up later on. A third and more complex example is the point on wall or the pipe through wall feature. An example where you might use point on wall is you might have been at a building site when it was bare stud walls and surveyed in where all the window openings and electrical outlet openings were. And then the drywallers could come in and cover everything with drywall. Then you'd come back to the same site, resect into the same control, and now you can project where all those cutouts need to be. Cut them out quickly, and then it's done. Pipe through wall is a slightly different function because it allows you to set two XYZ coordinates or just pick a CAD line, and then it will project where those two coordinates would intersect with the wall or the vertical plane. Interested in seeing if we have any questions about that? Jacob, anything come in?
I've just got a question here about what type of equipment this will work with, and the answer is in general it will be robotic total stations, and also the Leica 3D Disto supports it as well. And if you're not sure, you can always contact us to find out if your instrument is supported.
Great. Good. Okay. And okay, we've got one more topic, and this is where I can let Jacob take over for a little bit. And I've got to give Jacob a compliment at this point. You know, again, these features are existing because of the hard work of Jacob and his team, but Jacob is relatively new to the position of mobile product manager, and he's just showing the depth of his industry experience in how these features have been designed. They're just really well done. So I'm proud to introduce Jacob, and he's just going to talk about a couple of other refinements that he's introduced.
All right, thanks, James. When looking at FieldGenius, the one thing that struck me was that there was in some places a lot of need for scrolling through menus just because of the number of functions that you could choose from. And so one of the things that we decided to do was just to try to condense some of that into a single screen display, so that, you know, especially in cold weather and rain where the touchscreen may not work as well as in ideal conditions, it's just a single tap. And then because you can't fit 20 items on one page, we've had to introduce some submenus, and as a result we now have an indicator of where those submenus will be. So for example, on this slide here, setup and check is a new category within the measure modes, which will have all your setup and check related routines within that group. Likewise with the staking, the offsets, and the intersections. And the group code, of course, is in the main measure modes menu, and not within any subgroup like the intersections or offsets are. So again, here on the main menu, just to show you a bit more, we've added those indicators to show you which items are submenus, and this way it becomes obvious to the user and intuitive what they can expect when they hit that button. And another one that I'll just highlight here is the import and export menu in FieldGenius was it was getting quite long because we have so many options in there. And what we've done there is we've taken all those options and we've condensed them into 5 main categories. And for those of you who might be exporting a lot of cut sheet reports, it used to be in the staking menu, but it's now part of the import-export options. And you'll have your main categories for points and observations, which will allow you to do your ASCII import and export, for example. CAD, then XML and templates, that's for your DXF, DWGs, and so forth. Cut-sheet reports is its own category. GIS files is your shape files, your KML files, and coordinate systems. Other than that, yeah, the rest is pretty straightforward. It's very similar menus to what you're used to. Our project manager, we've made a couple of small changes here. Most notably, you'll notice that the delete option is no longer on the menu toolbar. It is an icon right next to the project name. And to make room for a new option, you can now choose to open or review and open a project. Previously, you would have the open option, which would always present to you the project filed screen. And this was a step that we thought we could eliminate because 99% of the time you may not need to make any changes to that and don't care what those options are. So this just takes that one step out of the procedure.
And the other advantage that I've noticed about the new review and open is that certainly when I'm trying to solve a problem, sometimes I need to reopen a project just to verify what its settings are, and there are certain circumstances where that just required you to close the program and reopen it in order to do that. Review and open now makes that entirely possible. I can have one project open, I want to see what my settings are, I just go back, I review and open it, there's my settings, and I can change them too.
That's correct.
So Jacob, unless you have anything else to say, I'd like to launch the last poll.
Yeah, go for it. I don't see any questions in the question chat box here.
All right, great. Okay, so our last question, which feature do you think will have the most impact? We're just interested in what you think is going to have the most impact. And so this is just a one answer, so choose carefully. Tell us which one you think will make the most sense to you. So far, it looks like RTS from Control Points is a clear winner. Okay, and let's close that poll. And let's review the results. So Jacob, we always learn things so quickly when anything is released. It looks like RTS from Control Points is a clear winner in this case. Interface refinements and group codes are a distant second place. So nice work with that feature. Okay, I will hide this slide and we're going to advance to tying things up. So just for our webinar attendees special, if you haven't already subscribed to the microsurvey email list, you can do so. What most people are discovering is that we've got lots of dramatic discounts on products for the month of December. If you're not getting those emails yet, take note of that URL, microsurvey.com/holidays, and sign up for it. We have extended the Christmas specials to the end of December for anyone who calls us up and says that they were at the webinar. There are two nice packages of FieldGenius. There's an Archer 2 and Mesa 2 bundle that if you're interested in getting a new data collector in FieldGenius, might be really attractive. So at this point, we'll sit back and we welcome any questions on the features that we've showed you, or if you have any other general questions about FieldGenius, go ahead and fire away.
I did have one question here regarding a simulator for FieldGenius, and I just wanted to tell the group that we have, of course, Windows Mobile versions, the Captivate version, and various other versions available. But we also have, if you're not familiar with it, a version that runs on any Windows tablet or PC. And the demo version allows you to completely try out all the functions within the program. If it's the demo mode, you'll be limited to storing 30 points, but you can even connect to instruments with it from your PC if you like.
Yep, and now that more and more people are using small tablet PCs for fieldwork, that version's becoming more important. But it's true, there are lots of companies that use them for training or for problem solving or for just trying out the software.
And another question just came in about whether the presentation will be available for the future, and the answer to that is yes, we are recording it, and you should get a email. Is that correct, James?
Yes, I've timed the email for 48 hours after the event, and it'll have a link to the recording.
Okay, another question, when will FieldGenius 9 be released? And the answer is it's ready to go. We are just waiting for some minor little technical upgrades to happen on our side. It will be very soon.
We're talking days, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, well then, thank you to everybody who attended. Thank you again to the presenters, and we were very proud to show you what we've built. Hope that everybody enjoys FieldGenius 9 when they get their hands on it, and hope everyone has a good weekend. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.